Uh, hmm.
Yes, we're hearing you.
Oh, praise his name, praise his name, praise his name. We bless his name.
I can hear you.
All righty. So thank you. His name, praise his name, praise his name. We bless his name.
I can hear.
All right. I went muted just so okay. All right. Let's navigate. Doc, are you hearing me now? Hmm. Okay, perfect.
We're hearing you. Perfect. Yes.
Perfect. All right. So let's look. We discussed the HPA axis and its dysfunction in terms of the release of cortisol and all of those. And we were discussing the genetic factor as it relates to the FKBP5 gene and how that helps with the susceptibility if it is in more proportion than it's supposed to be. And then we've spoken about last time about neuro toxicity, and that also the fact that the lowering of brain-derived neurotropic factor will also that's a type of protein that helps with the repair of the neurotransmitters and the synapses between them. All right. All right. So let's get back our minds in this place. Perfect. So we're going to look in a more holistic way about how suicidality happens. So let's look at these three phases that we are presenting to you to make sure that we are relevant within the context in which we now operate. Firstly, there is a developmental stage where the family of origin and how the family of origin handle issues, conflicts, how the environment, because environment also shape how genes are expressed or turned on. We spoke about that last week. So we call it epigenetic, right? So there's an environmental side to how you present your holistic development. Now, we want to make sure that we'll underscore that in the family dynamics, verbal abuse, neglect creates significant toxic stress, which creates significant vulnerability to suicidal ideation and execution. So I want to underscore that because most times as family, and for those of us who have emerged from the Caribbean and all those places, persons would use or ill will things to describe our behavior. For example, you're like that person, you're not coming out to anything good, or you're just like that. Those type of verbal rendition and presentation to children also make them susceptible. So I want you to know that verbal abuse and verbal diarrhea as it relates to the negative side really, really shape and change the brain. Anything that is stressful, it changes the brain and how the brain operates. So I want to underscore that. The next thing we talk about the environmental factor, such as the things that we have to deal in our environment, such as cyberbullying, sleep disruption, the internet and the social media, and we're going to look further at the AI and how that also presents on our social and our mental health as it relates to suicidality. We've just indicated this. So if there is hostility, neglect, trauma in the family of origin, that then gives that child insecure attachment and attachment styles such as anxious preoccupied or dismissive avoidant or disorganized attachment style. Those are the insecure attachment styles I've just outlined to you. Those make people susceptible, more susceptible to suicide and also to other mental health issues because that trades with a sense of lack of belonging, thwarted sense of belonging, not feeling a good self-worth, self-esteem, self-image. And then these individuals are aligned to be described by the social media. So social media give them their identity. And so when this is the case, then there's no internal mechanism to cause them to balance themselves. All right. And so when we talk about the neuroimagery or imaging that we use to scan the brain to see signals in the brain and all of those things, we realize that verbal abuse significantly change neural pathways. That is to say, the brain now receives it as normative that whatever it is that is being told to that person verbally is the reality. That compromises the ability to regulate and to see self in a holistic, good way, internal good. And then that also makes reality and life become burdensome because the person is stripped of motivation. There is no dopamine being released. The hormone that is being released or the neurotransmitter that is being released, it will be cortisol. And that flooding of cortisol also impacts a coping mechanism, which would make it maladjusted. And once there is maladaptive coping mechanism, we're going to find ourselves being more impulsive to self-harm. All right, let me check in because I want to know that I'm not talking to myself or my internet is gone. If I have mentioned to you just now, some of the ways, the 3 levels that we want to execute tonight and want to look more broadly at, what are those? Type in the chat any one of them that you can remember. I mentioned 3 things that would have an impact upon the susceptibility of suicidality. What are those? Name 1 or 2. Am I muted again? Is that? Oh. Let's see. Oh, so I'm being heard. Okay. All right. Perfect. So you're with me. All right. Okay. Let's navigate through this. All right. So we're saying now that our self-worth, therefore, especially in this day and age with the younger generation, is being filtered through the lens of what we see in the social media ecosystem. That is to say, we get our drive, we get our self-worth, we get our regulation, we get our sense of self and somebody-ness from what we see on social media and how many persons follow us and the click bites and all of those things. That in of itself is an unstable way to set up one's reality. And that has been correlated in studies, positively correlated to elevated suicidal ideation. All right, so let's look deeper into how social media affects mental health and then correlate to suicidality. Cyberbullying, for example, the harassment online, that also predispose people to the fact that they want to end their lives. They don't feel like anymore. People nowadays can just have an idea about you and they plaster that on the internet and they say things about you, things that they just have in their minds, things that are not verified. And then the click bites start to happen and you see this online, and then that drives you into a place where you feel as though you don't have any self-worth, and that in of itself can cause self-harm. All right. And then as it relates to this, what we call a rabbit hole, and the normalizing in the algorithm of self-injurious imitation. So for example, I learned the other day that a person went in and asked ChatGPT how it is that they can, how they can commit suicide, and it gave them a full list of how that can be done. And of course, although there have been mechanisms in place since that occurrence, there is a way to bypass that safety mechanism in the algorithm as well. And so over engagement in social media and on these AI tools can disrupt our sleep. And if sleep is disrupted, that's also an environmental trigger for our susceptibility to suicidal ideation. All right. And if you do not, and in this era of social media, again, you are having a much friendship, but you don't have any connection. And the lack of connection also provides for isolation and loneliness, which in of itself create a more vulnerability to the condition of suicidal ideation and attempts. Okay. And based on a study, based on the problematic use of AI and social media, it is 3 higher the risk of suicidal attempts and so forth. So here we have it. Social media and AI has a dual function, as it were. It manipulates, it can make individuals more vulnerable to these adverse conditions, such as suicide, as well as it can also help if the prompts are explicit. It can also help to prevent the cause of suicide. And so, first of all, this is what happens. There is a neural pathway where persons have isolated and sad mode. Then there is the algorithm that they're trying to engage with, and there is the false sense of assurance from the social media. Then the social media or the AI, because AI, what it does is just imitate and try to understand and try to find based on the data that it pulls, and it gives you based on the data it has. Remember, AI cannot think like a human being with emotions and feelings. So when you ask it for something, it is giving you the information that is available to it. And so it normalizes the whole idea of self-harm. And that becomes a problem in of itself. We talk about the emotional dependency on this. And I just shared with you that as a result of the engagement with AI chatbot, then somebody committed suicide and took their own life with the assistance of this, because they are so emotionally enmeshed in the AI and they feel they have a relationship with the AI. They feel intimate. People are even marrying to AI now. And so we find a severe challenge as it relates to this. And I'm making this awareness because we may think that on the one hand, and a matter of fact, this guy called Elon Musk, he indicated that AI has the potential to wipe us out, to kill us. Okay. And so this is what AI does. There's a false sense of security, a false sense of empathy, a false sense of dignity. But in that emptiness, and you're pushing the prompt, and this constant engagement with it will lead to harm if not managed properly. Okay. All righty. So I just mentioned to you, this is how it works. So there's a dual mode for it. For example, it engages in role play, that which is unmoderated. But at the same time, if it is supervised, it can help to provide a triage and help with curative and preventative accuracy in terms of predicting suicidal attempts. But it must be monitored, it must be supervised. So in practice, for me, I use AI in terms of making sure it helps me with my note taking and other things, and it can show patterns that I have discussed in session and all those things, because I am the individual that it is sending the information to. But when there is no monitoring, that becomes significantly problematic. And so you want to make sure that you manage your own interaction with these systems and also manage your family's interaction, especially where children are concerned. So this is how the loop works. So there is a family that gives the predisposition because of trauma. Self-worth is injured. The individual goes to the algorithm, which is the AI and the social media, to get validation because they're not getting it at home. Home is hostile, home is unsafe. They go there, and then that worsens it because there is no real validation on social media, because these people don't know you. They are in it for the clickbait. They are in it for selling their content. And AI is there to sell its content. There are persons behind this that are profiting from this. And so they are in the business of harvesting your information, and they're not careful to think how it's going to impact you. So they go there for validation. And when they go there for validation, it worsens the thing. And then there is this unregulated engagement and dependency and enmeshment with it. And then there is no solution that it can give. So let's look at some of the signs that we may need to pay attention to see when persons are spiraling towards self-harm. First, the person begins to give away all of their things. There is a sudden desire for isolation. They are cutting ties with their friends and their families. They are into self-mutilation. They're cutting themselves when they're angry, they're punching holes in things, they're cutting themselves. They want to do excessive of things. They're making wills for those who are older and even those who are younger as well. On the physical level, there drastic weight change and fluctuation in sleep pattern, inability to concentrate and be rational. They have this fixation on not being around. They want to be out of this world. The psychosocial aspect is that they come down with depressive presentation, lack of enthusiasm. They do not enjoy things that they used to enjoy. They feel trapped, empty, using words like, I feel like a burden. I feel empty. I feel like I am not loved, I'm appreciated, or any of those things. And this obsession with escaping the world. Those are some of the signs that you would need to look at. So normally, suicide dwells within these. They are co-current within these conditions, these psychological conditions, mental health conditions, depression. Of course, depression leads to hopelessness. Hopelessness then makes one want to escape that hopelessness. I've spoken about how it is that substance abuse trick the brain receptors, reward system, put you in a euphoric way. And so you feel like an escape, and that leads to overdosage. All right. And then you have the brain trauma or even childhood trauma. And we've spoken about some of these already. Okay, so these are some of the tools that clinicians use to assess suicidality. And one of the key persons in this lineup is the primary care physicians, doctors. They are the persons that most people go to first. Most people, before they go to a mental health practitioner, they will go to a primary care practitioner. And so that then becomes necessary for the primary care practitioner to do some assessment into the person's mind. Persons who are aligned to suicidal ideation, they begin to not dress themselves well, especially if they are having depression with that. Their clothes look raggedy, their grooming is off. Their speech is off, either they are running over their words because they're not processing them well, or they are very reticent, or they are very melancholy, so to speak. And so that is necessary as it relates to assessing and checking in. These are some of the tools that we use from a talk therapy standpoint to make sure that we're able to treat with suicide. And remember, suicide is not a solution to anything. Suicide is not a solution. In fact, suicide is seen as a selfish habit, a selfish thing, because the persons who are left behind have to deal with the sudden parting, and they have to deal with those consequences and live with those realities. So it's really selfish. And so if you feel hopeless, if you feel like life is not giving you more than what you were giving it, or life is not giving you what you had planned for, then the recommendation then is to see a mental health specialist, a therapist, and process those emotions. If you've been to war, for example, if there's anybody, a veteran here who's been to war, you want to make sure that you stay current with your therapist. If it is that you have endured sexual abuse, neglect, if you've seen violence in your family of origin, you want to make sure that you stay close to a mental health practitioner. You want to make sure that you build your social circle and that you do not isolate yourself, that you have healthy relationships and healthy boundaries so that you do not re-traumatize yourself. Okay, if you've endured verbal abuse, this is also important to work through those internal schema that you have built over time to deal with and cope with the severe thoughts in your mind. Because here is what it is. Once you're not sleeping properly, once it is that you've endured verbal abuse, which means, for example, I'm just using this as an example, if you've endured verbal abuse, it means, therefore, and you're not sleeping, it means that your default network is going to overwork and it is going to process, because that is where you reflect upon your own self. That is where your stories about yourself are stored. And so if that is not functioning, guess what the stories are that you're telling yourself? You're telling yourself you're not worthy, you're not worth being here, you don't want to be here, you feel trapped. And when you tell yourself those things, your brain provides evidence to support what you tell yourself. So negative self-talk is not a good idea, because your brain will always provide evidence for what you tell it, even if the evidence are not real, right? So cognitive behavioral therapy is to challenge distorted beliefs about yourself, challenge the concept you have about yourself, and ask you, do I have evidence for this? So for example, if you're going through this and before you reach to a therapist and you are having these entrapment ideology, you're having this worthlessness, hopelessness ideology, nobody loves me, nobody wants me around, I am not valuable. You want to ask yourself these questions that I'm presenting to you now. What evidence do I have to show that nobody likes me? This morning, my mother or my spouse told me that they love me. That's evidence to say that you're wanted, you have a place that you could belong. So you find the evidence to support the fact that your distorted belief about what you think reality means is not so. And that's how you challenge belief for yourself so that you can bring yourself to center. And then you talk to yourself and tell yourself, this is not true. The negative thoughts that I'm having, this is not true. I am loved. I have my children to live for. I have my job to live for. I have all of these things to live for. So you're trying to help yourself by making sure that you challenge the beliefs. Then you make sure that you have the capacity to manage your life. If it is that you need to pull yourself away from a stressful environment in order to come back to it. So you have to learn to self-soothe. Part of self-soothe is that you bring yourself to center. For example, if it is that you're having an emotionally charged, overwhelming moment, your heart rate elevates. You want to make sure you stop in that moment and allow the emotion to run over you for 90 seconds. You do deep breathing exercise. We call it mindfulness or grounding exercise, deep breathing. You close your eyes and you listen to the sounds that you have not listened to in your environment, or you smell something that you have not smelled in your environment, or you feel the sensation going through your leg as you sit on the chair, and you feel the heart as it palpitate in your chest, and you're taking note of the breath, how many breaths you take. What that does is that it distracts you from the negative thought and put you in a reality that you can manage so that you do not feel hopeless and feel like there is no hope. It is recentering you. If I'm making sense, put 2 in the chat. Put 2 in the chat. Come on, if I'm making sense, put 2 in the chat, 2 in the chat, 2 in the chat. Quick fingers, quick fingers. I'm checking in on you. We've had a not so pleasant start, so I want to make sure that we are still together in the mind space. 2 in the chat. Let's go. Let's go. I'm checking in on you. 2 in the chat, 2 in the chat, 2 in the chat. Pastor Adams, good to see you. 2 in the chat, 2 in the chat. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. 2 in the chat. Righty. Perfect. Right. So we talk about dialectic behavioral therapy. This is a therapy that helps with regulation. So it helps you to regulate your mood. It helps you to regulate your mood. So one of those is to take cold shower, for example, cold and warm shower that brings down your heart rate and your body temperature. And the grounding exercise that I was telling you about, that also comes from that. All right. And so there are several of those that you could engage in, and your therapist will be able to teach you some of these strategies that you can help with. All right. So I mentioned this. Make sure your primary care Be honest with them when you go about how you're feeling. Make sure that you have a therapist. Make sure that you manage your behavior and you have accountability partners. That would also help. So this is how the community and your connections and your social spaces can help. You're in the middle, you're the center in the middle. All right. You want to make sure that you surround yourself with individuals who can support you on this journey. All right. And you want to make sure that you have a broad base of the things and the resources that you need to take care of yourself. The key thing I want to emphasize tonight is that suicide is preventable. It does not have to happen. And as I made mention earlier in this presentation, that most people who have attempted suicide when they would have not been successful and they were asked the question, what is it that you thought about? They said that every problem they had was solvable except this current one, which was taking their life. And so problems are solvable. There is help available. We are in community. And the enemy of souls will want to make us feel that we do not live in community. And the culture that we have come to live in, especially with AI and the individualistic society that we have come to live in the West, makes us feel as though we are independent of each other. But independence is a fallacy. It is not a real concept. We were built, made to be interdependent. And so we want to make sure that we are in line with that. So I spoke about the ripple effects, the loved ones suffer, the emotional trauma, the shock, the anger, the guilt, and all of those things. And when it is that you practice this in your family, you also set a pattern in your family. I want to also make mention as we are closing now that suicidal attempts make suicidal completion also easier. So if you've attempted, you're making it normative in your mind. And so you're more susceptible for it. And so you have to make sure that you're within social, anchored socially, and you do the work with your therapist. All right, so I thank you for your time tonight. I hope that we made it clearly through and you were able to engage with this. I want to do a check-in with you now. So let me pull up my check-in. I want to make sure that we were engaged tonight. Give me a second. Let me bring this up. All right, so we want some quick fingers in the chat now. We're going to engage in this. I'm going to quiz you now to make sure you thought I've forgotten my little exercise. I haven't. I'm doing it at the end now. All right, so let's go. Let's go now. Who had a higher rate of suicide in the United States? Number A is men, B is women, and C, the rates are exactly the same. Okay. Okay. All righty. Keep your score. Go ahead. And then number 2 question. If a very depressed person suddenly becomes completely calm and peaceful, what could that mean? A, they are fully healed. B, they are just tired. Or 3, they may have a plan to end their lives. That's question number 2. Okay, so let me repeat the question again. If a person who was previously depressed were to become suddenly peaceful and calm, what could this mean? Could it mean that the person is completely healed? Is it that the person is just tired? Or is that the person that C, so those are A, B, and C, the person has a plan to end their lives? A, B, or C? Let's go. Some of you are thinking, quick fingers. A, B, or C? A, B, or C? A, B, or C? I understand that three, you're saying three means C. I'll take that as well. All right. Our next question. What is the single biggest warning sign that someone might commit suicide? Is it getting a bad grade? Is it a previous attempt? Or is it arguing with a friend? A, B, or C? Question again. What is the single biggest warning sign that a person may commit suicide? Is it getting a bad grade, which is A, B, a previous attempt, or C, they are arguing with their friend? Which is it? A, B, or C? And that was what? That was what? So I have two more questions and then we're done. Number 4, which of these is a common behavioral sign of suicide? A, giving away your favorite personal items. B, sleeping exactly 8 hours per a night. Or C, trying a new diet. What is the biggest or the most common behavioral warning sign of suicide? Is it A, giving away your stuff? B, sleeping exactly 8 hours a night? Or C, trying a new diet? Let's go. Quick fingers. Where are you? Quick fingers. Okay, let's go. All right, and the final question. If you're worried that somebody may commit suicide based on the warning signs that you've seen, what should you do? A, ignore the problem and hope it goes away. B, tell them to cheer up. Or C, ask them directly if they are thinking about killing themselves. A, B, or C. Again, if you're worried that somebody may commit suicide based on the warning signs that you've seen, what should you do? Ignore and hope it goes away. Tell them to cheer up and don't be sad. Or C, ask them direct questions about if they want to kill themselves. Let's see now who gets the most. All right. So number 1 was A. If you've gotten that, okay, so A. And then number 2 was C. Number 3 was B. Number 4 was A. And number 5 was C. If you've gotten all of them, I want for you to put 7 in the chat. If you've gotten all of them, I want for you to put 7 in the chat. Let's go. If you've gotten all of them, put 7 in the chat. Perfect, scored. 7 in the chat. If you've gotten all of them, put 7 in the chat. Let's go. 7 in the chat. 7 in the chat. If you've gotten all of them, so A, number 1 was A, number 2 was C, number 3 was B, number 4 was A, and number 5 was C. If you've gotten all of them, put A in the chat. Put 7 in the chat. If you've gotten 6 and fewer, put 8 in the chat. Okay. The next time, the next series next year, we will give you back to you. Thank you so much for participating.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Dr. Francis, for this informative. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to go to your reaction button on your Zoom, and if this was a blessing and if this was informative, I want you to show a reaction, an applause. If you loved what you heard, use up the reactions out there. Beautiful. They're coming through. They're coming through. Excellent. Excellent. Dr. Francis, thank you for bringing the rigor of science and the humanity of the work into this room this afternoon. In spite of the technical challenges we were faced with, you were able to navigate that and finish this presentation, and that's commendable. I want to also say the balance that you brought to this conversation is rare, and it's that kind of conversation that is so needed. Um, for me, as I listened to you, there were three things that really stuck out for me. First was a recognition. You know, some people in this room are clinicians, some are educators, there's some researchers, they're parents, and they're colleagues. And some, though we may not know it, are survivors, and they're quietly carrying loss or struggling tonight. And to all of you, thank you for being here. Showing up to a conversation like this is in itself a small act of prevention. So that's the first thing I want to highlight tonight, just to recognize those who are in the space. The second thing that I realize is that there is a responsibility. The evidence is clear from what you have presented tonight, that what we say after a talk like this matters as much as the talk itself. Ask direct questions when you're worried about someone. Ladies and gentlemen, the research as presented by the Goodly Doc consistently shows it does not plant the idea, it opens a door. It helps to reduce access to certain things that can impact, and it will be helpful for us to even follow up after that hard conversation, not just during it. And when you talk about suicide publicly in classrooms, in different settings, social media, lead with recovery and resources, not with method or despair. That came home to me in a very unique way. The third thing that I want us to really think through is, if anything tonight stirred someone or something in you, please don't carry it home alone. You know, in the US, if you are going through something, you can call, or text, I think 988. You can text. Please feel free internationally. If you're watching, just find a helpline.com or just reach out to some helping professionals who are trained to deal with this, and they'll connect you to resources and help you to navigate this. And most importantly, find in this evening's presentation the humility to have a conversation around this. It's so important. This is a significant moment. I've lost so many good friends, my friends tonight, good friends, death by suicide. And we can stem the tide. We can be a part of the journey back to center. As the good doc says, getting back to center is so important. So tonight, if you have questions for Dr. Francis, I'm going to open the lines right now, and I'm going to invite you to unmute. And if you have not typed those, you can use the raise hand feature in the chat, and I will acknowledge you at that time, and you can get to ask a question. If whilst he's answering a question, you want to type it in the chat, it would help us also, making things go a little bit faster. I see Dr. Viv. Go right ahead with your question.
Good evening, Dr. Francis. Excellent presentation. I was in and out of the presentation, but I'm not sure if you touched on this. It is said that suicide has to do sometimes with malfunction of the chemicals in the brain when there's an imbalance. How can we, because there's a notion that people say that people who commit suicide in the Christian scenes, that they have gone to hell. You hear that a lot, like they're not gonna go to heaven because they committed suicide. But on the medical side of it, how do you explain that with the imbalances of the chemicals in the brain and them not being able to rationally or logically, do things in the normal fashion versus somebody who everything is balanced and they're functioning normally? Can we 100% say that is a true statement or not? And how would you explain that?
Thank you. So, thank you for the question. It's a worthwhile question, a very good question. So, I mentioned a certain gene that produces a certain protein. It is called the FKBP5 that triggers the production of a certain protein that would help to balance cortisol. So, if cortisol and the HPA system is not working properly, then a person becomes really dysregulated. And if they are comorbid with other conditions, especially schizophrenia and severe bipolar and all of those severe depression, the person would be losing consciousness. I do not, from a psychological standpoint, that's what is happening. Okay. From a spiritual standpoint, I'm very tentative to enter into the realm of the divine because I do not have access to the information that the divine has. So when it is that individuals ask me a question like that, I do not know if it is that they are going to hell or heaven because I do not know the conversation that they've had with the divine. And so I stay out of that realm. I used to say when I was younger as a pastor, Dr. Hay, if persons commit suicide as a final act and they can't make it to heaven, and somebody says, so what about Samson? And I would say, hey, Samson was carrying out his God-given mandate, but he still killed himself. So, and then, so I do not go into that realm. I leave that with the divine. He's the one who does the saving. As a pastor, I just create opportunities for people to meet Jesus. So that would be my answer. I'm not navigating into that.
Well, I thank you for that response, but it's good for us to understand what's happening though in the brain and the dysregulation that
Right.
occurs. So I would say in general, you can't really make such a statement, you know, about individuals because we don't know at that time if they're really in their right mind, so to speak, when this incident occurs, just to write them off, so to speak, because a lot of people do, and we see that a lot in our churches, you know, and it's a general concept of the public.
Correct. I totally agree with you. And I think for some individuals, depending on the method that they use to harm themselves in that way, sometimes there's a break between the final moment and when they execute what they're executing. And they have moments that they can talk to their God. So we don't know what is happening with them and God, but in the brain, there are persons who are not within their cognitive fullness, and God works out something for them. Yes.
Indeed. All right. So Anne-Marie, your hand is raised. You go next. Your hand is raised. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Doctor. That was a very, very good presentation.
Thank
I
you.
have a brother who struggled with mental health, and I've been struggling with him the last probably 10 years. And I can see when the symptoms is coming on. When around September, you start seeing behavior change, and he started to do some of the things he would do around that time. But by November, it spikes, and he's out of control. And I'll take him to the hospital, and they'll assess him and let him right back out and said his mental health is fine. And they can't keep him against his will. And so I've struggled with that for many years. Like this winter, he was homeless. I could not control him because he was out of it. And I know my brother. He wouldn't shower, he smells, all of the above. Now that's not somebody who I know keep proper hygiene. And you're gonna look at me and tell me, yes, he drink also and he smoke, but that's not all. The mental health is there because you can see his behavior pattern And I've been dealing with it for a while. And so the system failed me over and over. And I pledged to myself, if something should ever happen to my brother, where he take his life, none of them can come to me and ask me any question. I tell them to their faces. I said, none of you, because you all wait until something happen before you act. And I don't want to hear it because I am tired. The young man went to a point where he told me he's coming out of his skin. Or he asked me one time, is there two Andre? Because I feel like one is up the road behaving and one is in the park not behaving. That means you're blank. And you're going to look at me and tell me that that person is, no, something is wrong right there. And so I'm struggling with him. And I know it's only prayer that's keeping him. It's only prayer of us and the prayer lines that I'm on and the prayers of my mother who passed away is still preserving that child. Because I see many prayers answered since my mom passed that she prayed for people. And so it's hard. It's really hard to deal with someone with mental health. It's not easy. And when you don't have the support team, it even make it worse. And so I don't know. At this point, I just leave it in God's hands because there's nothing else I can do. I've done it all in my strength. I can't.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I think we got disconnected with Doc, but I think he may be back now.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I think my internet went again.
Yeah, but thanks, Anne-Marie, for
Are you
sharing.
here?
Yes, we are hearing you, Doc, if you want to respond.
Dr. Francis, may I say something?
Yeah. So, Marie, I'm sorry to hear that you were
Can I ask?
experiencing that, and I could sense the frustration and the pain that you experienced and may still be experiencing. Doc, are you hearing me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Yes, you're clear.
We're not seeing you, though. Oh, there we go.
Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that it's a challenge regarding the system and how, you know, sometimes the system doesn't have the bandwidth for certain things. And this is not an excuse I'm giving you. I'm just sharing with you reality. So if you go to the hospital, for example, there's so much time that they can have that person, unless that person will be committed within a facility. If that is not an option because the person still has their faculty and not willing to sign to that, then the system become limited because of laws and stuff like that. So therapists would help, and if medication is an option, because it seems as though person may be comorbid with other conditions, so it's a compiling of situations. But I'm sorry to hear that.
Dr. Francis,
Thank you.
can I say
Dr.
something?
Francis,
May I say something?
Pastor Hay. Pastor,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, we are hearing you. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
All right. So I came on late, but I was trying to write down a few of the signs, Dr. Francis, that you say are kind of evident in a person with this idea of committing suicide. And a few that I wrote down was giving away things, isolation, self-harm, like cutting self, and taking risks. These are just few but I knew a person. This man lived with his wife, and everything seemed to be going on okay. The wife did not, I used to talk with her. She did not, share with me any of these signs that she saw in her husband. And the thing that struck me most is isolation. Barry was one of the most social persons that I ever knew. But yet, a few days after that, he jumped off a 12-story building. Am I still being heard, Pastor?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
So how do we account for that? Because all these signs that I down here, I didn't see it in this